play with me. Uh-oh, there's a friend in need. Hey, cheer up. Who are you? I'm a good guy. I've just come from the Good Guy Clubhouse, and I'll be your friend to the end. Heidi-ho! So all aboard for high-flying fun with me, your friend to the end, the Good Guy Doll from Playbound.
I'm Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. The Class of 1984 is a weird and violent movie that a lot of people think is absolute garbage. I think you do. I think it's a strong, original movie with a lot of style. The movie stars Perry King as a high school music teacher who gets involved in a war with a gang of punks who terrorize everyone in the school. And the result is a sort of futuristic punk rock blackboard jungle with elements of realism and a lot of anarchistic fantasy all mixed in together. Early in the movie, King introduces himself to his new students.
Are you in this class?
No.
You want to get out then, please?
No.
My name is Mr. Norris. I'm taking over for Mr. Goldstein. When I call your name, please answer here.
If I'm not here, do I answer not here?
Abrams?
Not here.
Aladopoulos?
Oh, no, not here.
What is your name, please?
No. No, he doesn't look too good.
You jerks don't belong here.
You shut your hole, you little...
You don't scare me, freako.
Cool it. What is your name, since you seem to be in charge of this group?
My Namen ich bin Stegman. Peter.
You're okay. The others, I would guess, belong somewhere else.
They stay with me. Me. Oh, just leaving. Not here. Bye-bye.
That's Timothy Van Patten as the future Hitler there. The movie combines supercharged realism like that with a lot of violence, a lot of rock and roll, and a certain amount of comedy. And this is one of my favorite sort of comic scenes. Roddy McDowell plays a teacher who will try anything to make his students study their biology.
How many chambers are there in the human heart?
4. I think 4.
It's wonderful. Oh, it's a pleasure. It's just a pleasure. Oh, such a tremendous pleasure. Mr. Stegman, what is an amphibian? You should know. We had such a wonderful display hanging on our wall. You don't know. It's too bad.
This may be the first high school movie that teachers can enjoy. I wonder if you get the idea that The Class of 1984 is a good movie. I think it is. It's not junk. Although a lot of critics have dismissed it, and Newsweek called this movie The class of 1982 with herpes. Well, that's not fair. There are so many movies about high schools in revolt and punks in rebellion. They all get lumped together as dead teenager movies and dismissed. But the class of 1984 is a little different and a little special. This is a movie with style and humor and a lot of raw energy. I liked it.
And I'm sitting here thinking I wish I wrote that Newsweek line, because I really didn't like the movie, Roger, and I'm surprised you did, because very early on we see the teacher with the beard, the good teacher, Perry King, and we see his wife, and we're told right away she's a few months pregnant. And right away I turned to the person I was with and said, she'll be raped in a few scenes, and she was. And then I see Roddy McDowell, affectionately like his pets, in the biology lab. And I turned to my companion and said, watch out, all the animals will be skinned.
Okay, so you're prescient. What do you...
Not prescient, that's easy. And a movie that can be described that quickly falls into a pattern that simply is over before it begins.
The movie cannot be described that quickly because all you're doing is limiting it to the plot. This movie is based on style and energy. It's based upon the feeling that it gives us. Of course, a lot of this stuff is predictable,
yeah,
but it's miles better than most high school movies.
That you're not giving it much of a compliment when you say that. I think that this is true, that the people, the punks that they are in this film, are more like punk rock musicians than they are real kids, and this film tries and bathes itself with realism.
The class of 1984 sounds like another one of those dead teenager movies with a mad slasher sneaking down the hallways and terrorizing everybody in the high school, but it's actually a lot better than that, and I don't care how many critics have attacked this movie as complete garbage. I think it's pretty good. It stars Perry King as a young music teacher who goes man-to-man against a punk high school gang leader, and the gang rules the school.
When I call your name, please answer here.
One of the movie's best and strangest scenes stars Roddy McDowell as a biology teacher who'll do anything to get his students to study their lessons. McDowell has a couple of good scenes in this movie, and the ending of the film is spectacular. It's sort of a combination of Halloween and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I think The Class of 1984 is a pretty good movie. It shouldn't be confused with the run-of-the-mill dead teenager exploitation high school films. It's violent, it's gory and bloody, but it's also got a lot of style and a lot of raw energy. I'm Roger Ebert, and I'll see you at the movies. My next overlook video is called The Class of 1984, and I guess it should fall in the class of guilty pleasures, movies you're almost ashamed to admit that you liked. And yet this movie has energy and a lot of force and a certain amount of wacko humor, and I'm sure that Gene agrees.
No.
It takes place in a high school that is terrorized by student hoodlums, and in this scene, a teacher fights back.
What are you doing? I'm teaching. Can't you see that? You. Tell us the factor for the female of the species. Stand up when the teacher talks to you.
Wait a minute, Jerry.
Andrew. I don't come into your class and tell you how to teach now. What is the answer, please? Well, you simply cannot afford to fail this class. Now, what is the answer? What is the answer? Please. Why? What? You see how simple it is?
New teaching methods there by Roddy McDowell as the teacher with a gun, and Perry King from Riptide as the other teacher. And there's a trivia question for you. Which of our shows reviewed 2 Perry King movies? Vincent Van Patten is very convincing in this film as the leader of the Hoods. Class of 1984 may be a violent teenage exploitation picture, maybe, but it's not a bad one and it's not a dumb one. It tries to be more than it seems, and it's a very effective thriller, no matter what anybody says.
Yeah, I love when you point not a dumb one, and they know where you're pointing.
Yeah, goodness knows that you never point on the show.
I just thought it was routine. I mean, I thought it was...
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there was Fast Times from Ridgemont High was better than this one, and that's the one
I know, I think you're really, if you remember it correctly, and obviously I don't think you do, this movie has a real high energy level and a real drive from beginning to end. It was directed by Mark Lester, and I felt that he had a real touch for this material. And that's really what I thought. I've said really 6 times now, and all you do is look at me. It's an automatic pilot. I recommend the film. If you're gonna rent a teenage exploitation film, rent a good one. That's my stand.
Yeah. And I just came up with a better one, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, which, by the way, I didn't think was all that good either. Go with I'm just saying that this is a tremendous category. Go with Breakfast Club. Go with American Graffiti. These are much better films.
We're going to do that on another program.
Yeah.
With the same program on which you're going to do.
Yeah, no, that was a mistake. You just made a mistake. Admit it.
Next is the movie Psycho 2. It's 22 years later, and Anthony Perkins is back at the Bates Motel again as the most famous mad slasher in movie history.
Something wrong, Norman?
Okay, now this next movie we have is one that no true movie buff or lover believes could ever really be made. The name of the movie is Psycho 2, and this movie has the presumption to believe that Sir Alfred Hitchcock didn't finish his story with the original Psycho back in 1960. Well, I walked into this movie with a certain amount of resistance just to the idea of any movie called Psycho 2 because I admire the original Psycho so much. But the opening half hour of the movie is sort of creepy because it reminds us so convincingly of Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins, and of the violent events at the Bates Motel. Look at this scene from early in the film. Anthony Perkins hardly seems to have changed at all since 1960. That scene is a direct reference back to the original Psycho. Later in this movie, Bates offers shelter to a young girl who triggers his old phobias.
But this is yours.
No, go ahead. You have it. I'll make myself another.
Do you have a knife?
No, I'm afraid I don't. I just moved back here after being many years away, and I forgot to bring any cutlery.
That's odd. People usually leave something, even if it is only an old butter knife. Ah, there. Something wrong, Norman? Aren't you going to eat?
No, I just suddenly lost my appetite, but you go ahead. Enjoy it.
Now, there's one question you have to ask yourself. Will an audience that isn't familiar with the original Psycho get the same kind of charge out of that knife scene that we do?
Yes, I think I like the sound effect of the knife scraping on the plate. That was nice.
It means a little more if you know what Norman Bates has been up to earlier in his life.
A little more.
There's one thing Norman Bates should have learned during his 2 decades of psychiatric treatment is that he never, ever should have gone back inside that house again, but he does. And then another series of murders breaks out, and Norman thinks he's going crazy, which is a little ironic. Psycho 2 isn't a bad movie, but it's not really a worthy sequel to Psycho either. I'd suggest that the best way to enjoy this movie would be to try to put the original Psycho just totally out of your mind. But the problem is the very first opening scene of Psycho makes that impossible, because what they do is repeat Hitchcock's shower scene, and by letting Sir Alfred have the first word, they let him have the last word too.
Yeah, this is a tricky film. I think audiences would generally enjoy it, but I'm going to make my comments on grading, if you will, reviewing this specific movie. And it does nothing extra than the original film did. What I like about sequels that are good, like Godfather 2 or Rocky 2 or even Superman 2, is that they take the characters into new places. This is basically a retread with sort of a wink at the audience, and it's played as much for laughs as it is for horror. I just don't think it was anything special. We don't need this movie.
I think, well, first of all, that's right. And then secondly, do you think it would have been more interesting to have Norman Bates go out into real society, move to San Francisco or Denver or something,
yeah,
try to get involved in things?
I think the ghost of the original obviously hangs over this production, and it's too bad, because it's a nicely made picture.
Nicely made, but you're quite right, it's unnecessary.
We copy.
Starving yourself is
Number 6 on the list is Psycho 2, a sequel to Alfred Hitchcock's classic 1960 thriller. Like the original, the remake starred Tony Perkins as Norman Bates, the weird proprietor of a roadside motel.
Do you have a knife?
No, I'm afraid. I don't. I just moved back here after being many years away, and I forgot to bring any cutlery.
That's odd. People usually leave something, even if it is only an old butter knife. Ah, there. Wrong, Norman?
I don't know what you think about Psycho 2, and I don't think very much of Psycho 2, but I love that moment where Anthony Perkins says, cutlery.
That's great.
What, more Cloak and Dagger? Why don't I just get through telling
Dad, this is important. Just wait a minute, you'll see.
you? Oh, Davy.
Just give me a chance. A man was just killed for this.
Alone and afraid, at the mercy of ruthless killers, it was too late to scream for help.
Fright Night represents the return of the vampire film in modern clothes. As one of the characters asked during the film, aren't you tired of seeing only axe murderers wearing ski masks chop up young women in the movies these days? He's got a point there, and it is a funny line, and for a while, Fright Night has a lot of funny lines, telling the story of a young man discovering, even though no one will believe him, of course, that a vampire has moved into the house next door. That's why he visits the host of the local TV horror film show played by Roddy McDowall, because this kid needs and really wants help.
What you want me to sign? Pardon me? Well, you do want my autograph, don't you?
No. No, sir, I was curious about what you said last night on TV, you know, about believing in vampires.
What about it?
Were you serious?
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, none of your generation seems to be.
What do you mean?
I have just been fired because nobody wants to see vampire killers anymore, or vampires either. Apparently all they want are demented madmen running around in ski masks, hacking up young virgins. Now, if you would excuse me.
I believe in vampires.
That's nice. If only there'd been a few more of you, perhaps my ratings would have been higher.
In fact, I have one living next door to me. Would you help me kill him?
That part of the story is kind of fun with Roddy McDowall. Less appealing is the horror material. For example, when one of that kid's friends, who doubts that vampires exist, learns otherwise in an alley.
Hello, Edward. You don't have to be afraid of me. I know what it's like being different. Only they won't pick on you anymore or beat you up. I'll see to that. All you have to do is take my hand. Here, Edward. Take my hand.
Now, that kid there was Stephen Jeffries. He's the guy that Roger and I were always saying looked exactly like a young Jack Nicholson.
If Nicholson's ever looking for somebody to play his son, that's the guy who gets the job.
You bet. Now, those long nails we saw at the end of the picture actually, I thought, proved to be the undoing of Fright Night, because the often witty and funny movie in the beginning sadly turns at the end into a ghoulish special effects show full of disintegrating bodies, rotting corpses, and the sickest of all, a dying dog that crawls around with a stake through its heart. a lot of special effects in this film that are all too familiar or just plain gross. So, a reluctant thumbs down from me on Fright Night because it is simply too gross at the end after a very funny beginning.
Well, it's a close call for me, but I do give it a thumbs up because I did think it was funny. And also, you're objecting to rotting corpses and disintegrating bodies in a vampire movie? What do you expect they're going to find in that coffin?
Not to the degree, Roger. In other words, we've seen other vampire films from
Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing,
where one thing disintegrates and it's a big moment, and we see it all turn into this.
You're ignoring the paradox of rising expectations in special effects films. This is 1985. You can't have Vincent Price putting one stake through one heart anymore. You got to have all that
I'd
stuff.
settle for two,
and
not
also,
200.
Also,
not
partially
200.
it's satirical. For example, when the
dog
vampire,
is satirical. Was that satirical when the dog is running around? That wasn't satirical. That was gross.
So let it be gross. I mean, you're looking at a vampire movie and you're saying it's in bad taste. It's supposed to be in bad taste. That's the whole point.
No, there have been other vampire films that have been quite stylish. Nosferatu. Even The Howling I liked, which was on the border of gross. I'm just saying it's too gross.
Well, this movie has nothing at all to do with Nosferatu or The Howling.
It has a lot to do with The Howling.
The fact that Roddy McDowell is the tip-off, it's a Saturday afternoon.
That stuff is fun. I said it too.
Vampire movie that's having fun with itself, and at that level, I give it thumbs up.
Continuing this special show on horror movies we think deserve a wider audience, my next choice is Fright Night, a 1985 comedy thriller about a teenage kid who becomes convinced there are vampires living next door. Well, he's right, but there's no way to convince the cops who won't take him seriously. In desperation, he turns to the only vampire expert he knows, a broken-down old B-movie actor who's just been fired as host of the local creature features. He's played by Roddy McDowell, and he'll do anything to earn a few bucks, anything to pay the rent.
I have just been offered a starring role in a major film. I have even had to quit Fright Night. And so you see...
I'll give you money.
How much?
The first half of the movie is funny, but the second half gets scary and features a lot of good special effects by Richard Edlund, the same man who did the effects for the original Ghostbusters.
You're out of time, Mr. Dangle. Look over your shoulder.
Fright Night came out at about the same time we were getting an epidemic of dead teenager movies, but it belongs to a whole different tradition. It goes back to those 1960s movies starring Peter Cushing, Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, movies that at least pretended to take themselves seriously and still had a lot of fun with pseudoscientific gobbledygook about vampires and stuff like that. I enjoyed it.
I liked Roddy McDowell in the film. I thought he was very funny, and that's the part of the picture I enjoyed. When the killing started, that's when I checked out. I wasn't interested in.
I don't seem to be having any luck at all with you. This program is supposed to be horror movies that we both like, and I like all 8 of them, and you like 4 of yours and 1 of mine.
Well, I'm a little bit more selective, I think.
Do you really think so?
Yes.
You don't remember the Fright Night, the scenes in the basement with the dog? Weren't you screaming in the theater when that...
No, and were you really screaming?
Well, not exactly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, here comes my standard Whoopi Goldberg movie review. Previous versions were for Jumpin' Jack Flash and Burglar, in which the point was made that Hollywood is taking this talented actress and using her like a wind-up toy to walk her through endless action sequences. In Fatal Beauty, Whoopi Goldberg plays a narcotics detective who is always going undercover to make a bust, as in this scene where a pimp tries to pick her up.
You have got a future in this town, and I can feel it in my bones.
Stop that now.
Trust me.
No, you don't want to go. Stop
this
that
is
now.
your lucky night.
No,
I am going to open up a whole...
You're going to open up something you don't want to know about.
What
now
is that?
Stop. Oh, that.
That.
That's Rad.
Rad?
Mm-hmm. Conrad. Under arrest.
Looking for bigger fish to catch, Whoopi worms her way into the house of a high society lady who has an absurd, very casual attitude about her son's involvement with cocaine, and she has a hostile attitude toward cops.
You have the right to remain silent.
You. Ow!
That's not very original, and that's true of most of this movie, save for a potentially interesting relationship between Goldberg and Sam Elliott, playing the head of security for a drug kingpin. He's assigned to follow her, but it's not easy.
I gotta go.
Well, I'm going with you, lady. You made a out of me once this morning. You're not going to do it again.
Really? Have a good evening.
Yes, that's exactly what I want to see Whoopi Goldberg do, shoot tires in a movie. They have one decent scene together where Whoopi Goldberg finally tells him why she has such a passion for catching dope dealers, and that's a very good scene. You know what's so good about the scene? Whoopi Goldberg simply talks, and when she is allowed to talk, she can be a very compelling actress, as we know from The Color Purple. But she spends a lot of fatal beauty screaming and shooting at drug dealers. Too bad, another missed opportunity for the talented Whoopi Goldberg.
You're right about that scene. It's a great scene. It really moved me. But I like the movie better than you did, too. I think it's the best of the action pictures she's made. I thought there was a very strong relationship between her and Sam Elliott. And I also thought there was a very strong motivating force in why she was going after these drug dealers. And another thing I thought was that this movie is the real Beverly Hills Cop Part 2. This is the kind of movie that Eddie Murphy should have been making instead of the way over-the-top action and violent movie that he made. This movie has a lot more human nature in it.
You've compared this film now to some bad films, other Whoopi Goldberg films, to Beverly Hills Cop 2, another bad film. If you're saying it's better than that, that's not saying a whole lot. I still think we have yet to see Whoopi Goldberg do the kind of quality film, save for Color Purple, that I think we both know that she's capable of.
I have a feeling that if she were going to wait around for another role like The Color Purple, she probably wouldn't have made a movie since The Color Purple. I think she's working as an actress. She's better in this film than she was before, and I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed it as an action picture. I'll defend it on that basis.
No, not me. I just didn't care for the film.
Did you like it better than Beverly Hills Cop 2?
Well, I already said I did. That's not a big compliment. I also liked it better than Amazon Women on the Moon.
Case closed.
What case? Some briefcase.
It's not as bad.
Keep going, big guy.
As you're trying to give the impression that it is.
Keep going. Coming up next, a child's doll contains the soul of a mass murderer in child's play.
Don't you see?
Today we've had movies about an adulterous priest, an orphan kitten, an orphan brontosaurus, a guy that gets out of a hospital bed in order to shoot a horse, and now we have a mass murderer who possesses a child's doll.
Just an average week.
Just another week on the beat. Our next movie is named Child's Play, and it begins with a dying mass murderer, the Lakeshore Strangler, who has studied voodoo and uses black magic to transport his soul into the body of a good guy doll. Catherine Hicks plays the mother who unknowingly buys the possessed doll and brings it home as a present for her son, played by Alex Vincent.
A good guy! I knew it! I knew you'd get me one.
Show me how he works, okay?
Hi, I'm Andy. What's your name? Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. Heidi-ho.
Wow, he's something, isn't he?
After his babysitter is killed by being pushed out the window by the doll, the little boy claims that Chucky the doll is alive, but of course, no one will believe him.
He said that Maggie was a real bitch and got what she deserved.
How can you say something so horrible?
I didn't say it, Chucky did.
Andy, stop it. You know perfectly well that you're making this up.
But I'm not. Chucky's alive.
Not even Hicks believes her own son until she makes the chilling discovery that Chucky can talk, even though he doesn't have any batteries.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Child's Play is a good example of the sort of horror movie that I call the false alarm film, because every time there's a false alarm and then everybody relaxes, then the creature attacks. The movie is well made with convincing performances by Catherine Hicks and little Alex Vincent. And I guess I should also mention they did a good job on the doll. In the early scenes, it looks so wholesome, you know it has something wrong with it. And in the later scenes, it transforms itself into a truly frightening personality. It was an effective horror film.
It wasn't an effect. It was not for me. No, I mean, I laughed at the doll, and I also don't like to have scenes with children in terrorized situations. You remember, you said at the top of the show about how you were sick and tired of seeing priests being used as villains in a way, or their sacraments being tossed around. I hate to see kids in perilous situations. I think it's one of the easiest, cheapest thrills that you can do.
Yeah, but this is a plucky little kid.
Yeah.
And he stands up for himself, and he is not just simply running around screaming.
He's not entirely.
He's given something to do, and he's a pretty good actor.
I think that the business, if you want a picture about where a doll comes alive and is really threatening, I think a good film was, a better film was with Anthony Hopkins and Margaret called Magic a few years ago. This film is not at that league. I just thought it was silly, and I didn't buy it at all.
Okay, next movie, and our next movie is The Temp, another one of those films where you can't trust anybody because the better they seem to be, the more likely it is they're really homicidal maniacs. The movie stars Tim Hutton as an ambitious young marketing executive in a gourmet cookie company, and Lara Flynn Boyle as the temporary secretarial worker who turns up in his office one morning.
You did all this?
I was just killing time until you arrived.
Oh.
Of course, she is a marvel of efficiency who claims to care only about making her boss look better. So when an important report is late, she saves the day.
Cutting it a little close, aren't you, buddy?
Isn't there some executive ass right now you could be kissing there, Jack?
Asses I kiss don't belong to any executives. Who the hell's that?
There's an attraction between them, but then Hutton begins to get suspicious about all the terrible accidents that happen to anybody who gets in Flynn's way. He resists her come-on.
I don't get involved with my assistants.
Maybe someday I won't be your assistant.
A lot of the opening setup of The Temp is terrific, and I was looking forward to a good thriller, but then the movie completely falls apart. It's almost as if the first hour was written by a full-time screenwriter, and then they brought in a temp to finish the screenplay. The movie sets up a relationship between Hutton and his former wife, but it never follows it through. It sets him up as a paranoid with mental problems, but never delivers on the obvious story possibilities along that line. It sets up Boyle as an apparent killer, but in a plot so murky and contradictory and confusing, the movie doesn't seem to know what to make of her. And then the climax is completely inexplicable, raising so many questions. We're still asking them when the movie is over. For example, they were out in the country. How do they get back to the bakery? How come the bakery looks like it manufactures automobiles instead of muffins? What's the other woman doing there? Why doesn't he ask that question?
They've got two,
etc.
They got two good actors and giving pretty good performances. And the problem is they run them through a cornball slasher script at the end. The office situation is interesting. I think they probably made a mistake on making them cookies because that seems so comical almost. And in a serious picture, she's a good actress. They needed a better script again.
Well, you know, one of the other problems is that...
I mean, it's laughable when all these murders are going on in a cookie factory and things are so...
They can't get anybody left. Nobody can be president. Dying. Everybody is dead. But what I couldn't understand is why the plot couldn't make things more clear, because by the end of the film, there were all kinds of loose ends.
Very confusing.
From the best-selling novel by Stephen King comes the new shape of terror.
This diet you're on, what is it?
I don't think you'd like it, Henry.
Being erased.
Let's recap our reactions to the movies on this show.
We split, though, on the class of 1984, the story of punks terrorizing a high school. Gene said it was predictable and the students were caricatures. I thought the movie had a lot of style and raw energy.
Two downturned thumbs for Psycho 2, a well-made but weak carbon copy of the great Alfred Hitchcock thriller.
Split on Fright Night, Roger enjoying it more than I did. I thought it ran out of laughing gas at the end and got too gross. Roger disagreed. Split vote on the horror film Child's Play. I thought it was silly. Roger thought it's worse.
2 thumbs down for The Temp, a movie that disappears into an impenetrable thicket of murky plotting.
Charlie?